Hey guys, Triple B here. We've got another batch of Pokemon cards getting revealed, which after the reveals we saw yesterday is kind of surprising, and they're honestly all pretty sick too, to be honest. We're getting Hydregion EX, Terra Tatsugiri EX, and Milotic EX, as well as Jasmine and some other cards out of the set Supercharged Breaker. So to start off, the Milotic EX, it's got an ability, Sparkling Scales. You're going to prevent all damage and effects done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Terra Pokemon's attacks. So things like Charizard EX, Dragapult TX, Ogerpon, yeah, they can't do anything into this. They say Terra, it's a, yeah, you do absolutely nothing into me. Meaning that decks will have to start potentially building around this card if it becomes relevant in the meta. And having an attack that does some decent damage and puts your opponent to sleep, honestly, I feel like it's got potential. Water double colorless, you're gonna do 160 and put them to sleep. So you could be charging this up with Baxcalibur, potentially just doing like water DTE to get it going, as well as another route you could go, but I feel like Baxcalibur is probably the best way, because 160 2 times, you're getting up to 320 across the 2 hits. Having a Vitality Band on there, 170, that's 340 across 2 hits, meaning you're half hitting them, they're asleep, they have to try and switch out or flip heads, and then have a Pokemon that doesn't say Terra on it to even do any damage into you. So honestly, kind of keen for this card to come out, and I could definitely see it having an impact on the meta, but that's just my thoughts. I'd love to hear your opinions on it as well. Tapu Koko, being a single prize Pokemon we're getting in the set, has Call for Thunder. You're going to search your deck for up to 2 Lightning Pokemon and put them into your hand. So they're not going directly on your bench, so it's not like you can be evolving up next turn if they're like basics or anything like that. Having a Miraidon that can just search your deck for 2 Lightning Pokemon and put them onto your bench, like 2 basics, so this could be getting you your evolution pieces, I feel like is kind of the niche that it's going to be filling, but realistically, it's probably a card that's going to be played in GLC and maybe pre-releases. I'm not too sure that it'll be relevant in Standard. The second attack though, Prize Counter, does 90 base damage, then if you have more prize cards remaining than your opponent, 90 more. So 180 on a single prize Pokemon, it's not too bad, especially to get through things that are going to wall off, right? Like Aegislash, we've seen that coming up a little bit recently on Limitless tournaments. It's invincible into EX and V Pokemon. Maybe Tapu Koko finds a place in like being a single prize attacker for Miraidon decks, as an example. Could definitely be something interesting to kind of experiment around with, and it's always good to have these kind of like tech cards that we can slot into decks. We're getting a new Togetic line, so the Togepi, 2 colorless energy, 30 damage, it's nothing to write home about. It's Togetic, kind of the same thing. It's the stage 1, you need to have one to be able to get into the Togekiss or Rare Candy over it, and Togekiss though being a pretty interesting card. The ability on here, Wonder Kiss, whenever your opponent's active Pokemon gets knocked out, you're going to flip a coin. If you get heads, you're going to take 1 extra prize from that knockout. The ability doesn't stack though, so you can only really have like 1 Togekiss that's being used, right? Like you can't have 3 of these on your bench, knock out the active, flip 3 heads, take 3 extra prizes. It's limited to just 1. And honestly, totally fair. You don't want to just be pulling some shenanigans like that. It doesn't just say once per turn though, it just says when your opponent's active gets knocked out. So if you do have ways to knock out your opponent's active Pokemon, like Dusclops, they get knocked out in the active, you flip a coin. If it's heads, take an extra prize. They have to declare a new Pokemon to go into that active spot. Maybe you have another Dusclops or Dusknoir, do it again, hit another heads, take an extra prize, and then actually attack their active Pokemon, flip another coin, potentially get a heads. I think you see where I'm going with this. If you were able to go Dusclops or Dusknoir, knock out the active, you take a prize from knocking it out, then potentially a second one from knocking it out. If it's a single prize Pokemon, that is. If it's a 2-prizer, potentially you're getting 3 prizes off it. Go into another one, do the same thing. Go into another one, do the same thing. You could theoretically get 6 prizes in 1 turn. Obviously, it's a bit of a high roll play. You're needing to get multiple evolution Pokemon set up, as well as have an attacker in the active that can actually just normally take a knockout. But yeah, there's definitely some shenanigans there, and I'd love to hear what you guys are kind of thinking up now that this card's been revealed. We're getting a Dino line though, so this one a little bit different. Stomp Off, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. It's like a very small mill effect. It's not what you're going to be playing it for though. It's mainly in here to evolve. We're getting Xylos. It's a stage 1. We need one. Similar thing. Dark Energy, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. It kind of sounds like it's going in like a mill route. Maybe the Hydregion is a mill card as well. And then no, completely different direction with this one. So it is a Terra Pokemon, so that Milotic, you're not going to be able to hit it. But anything else, you can be using Crash Heads. You're going to do 200 damage and discard the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. So it does sort of have that milling effect going on. It's not a lot, but like enough that you could disrupt them, right? Like if you're hitting their key pieces, like their rare candies, their boss's orders, their draw supporters, you can be disrupting your opponent It's a nice little bit of a side, I guess, strategy the deck can be running. 200 damage though, it's nothing too crazy. Like you're not even going to be one-shotting basic EX Pokemon unless you have like Vitality Band to get up to 210. Maybe you're taking out an Ogerpon or Defiance Band to boost it a little bit more. Max Belt theoretically to get up to 250 and one-shot like a Raging Bolt. So there's ways to pump it a little bit, but you're kind of going for like a 1-2 combo here. So the second attack is going to do 130 damage. So you take that 200 plus 130, you get up to 330. That's enough to take out stage 2 EX Pokemon over 2 attacks. You're also going to be doing 130 damage to 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. You're not going to apply weakness or resistance though. Standard stuff when you're hitting the bench, it's just flat damage to them. Something to keep in mind, Manaphy obviously blocking this, but Manaphy is going to be rotating early next year, so that's not really something you need to worry about for too much longer. Rabska's still going to be in rotation, so maybe that starts seeing some play as bench protection, but if you can get this off before they get that set up, you can be taking out free evolution Pokemon or some key pieces off their bench. Maybe they're draw supporters and stuff, like draw support Pokemon. Bibarel also being rotated at that point, but just something to keep in mind. Also, another thing to be mindful of, you're not going to be able to hit Terra Pokemon since the Terra rule is they don't take bench damage, but things like Pidgeot EX or pre-evolutions are kind of fair game. So very interesting card. The attack cost though, a little bit awkward on here, being Psychic, Dark, Steel, and then Colorless. You are a Dark Pokemon, so you could be using Dark Patch for the brief period that's going to be in rotation with this. I think you'll get about 6 months, right? Because this will be out, this set will come out in November, probably around March rotational hit. Okay, maybe like 4.5. You could be using Dark Patch, so the Dark Energy and the Colorless Energy, theoretically paid by Dark Patch. Steel, maybe you run it with Matang and then manually attach a Luminous Energy to cover the Psychic. Like there's ways to get it going. I guess you could try and run it with like a Lost Box engine using Mirage Gates, like double Mirage Gate, get this charged up. It's some very awkward energy counts to get out though, so I'm hoping we see more support for like Terra Pokemon to kind of assist with this. Interesting card though. Like honestly, kind of keen to cook some stuff up with this, and talking to one of my buddies earlier tonight about this card, and he's really keen for it as well. So I don't know, we'll see what we can put together. What are your thoughts on this card though? Tatsugiri EX. I'm interested in this one, but I don't know. I don't think it's great, but don't let my opinion sway you. The first attack, Sneaky Pump, is going to do 100 base damage. The damage is going to ignore all effects on your opponent's active Pokemon though, so it's essentially a basic shred attacker you can slot into decks. Costing a fire and a water energy, not too hard to do. It is a Terra Pokemon, so you could be giving it that crystal card to pay for one of the energy and then just manually attach the other color onto it. You could be putting this in Charizard, maybe like a Luminous Energy to have a shred attacker to get through things like Mimikyu, which kind of a useful thing, and being a basic Pokemon, it's not a bad shout. The second attack on there though, costing a fire, water, and dark energy, you're going to look at the top 10 cards of your deck, choose any number of Pokemon you find there, and put them right onto your bench. It doesn't say basic Pokemon, so it's like you can be cheating out evolutions with this, which honestly kind of keen for that. There's that stadium card, Night Academy, where you can just put a card from your hand on top of your deck. You could just be guaranteeing yourself a stage 2 off of it, and then just hoping to hit into some other Pokemon off the top of your deck. I'm not too sure if there's any other ways to really like swap out cards onto the top of your deck at the moment though. I guess Cypher Maniac, like you go Cypher Maniac, guarantee 2 cards on top of your deck, then use Academy at Night, put a card from your hand on top of your deck, so you're guaranteeing yourself 3 hits off of it. There could be a concept there. I'm not too sure what you'd really want to be cheating out with this though. Like you'd likely be going for a bunch of stage 2s, so maybe something like Caracosta just to boost up your damage into evolution pieces. Maybe those togekiss so that when you do take a knockout, you can potentially get extra prizes. But yeah, there's definitely going to be some fun shenanigans you can try and throw together with this. New Slakoth line, also pretty keen on these guys. So the Slakoth, take it easy, heal 60 damage from this Pokemon. During your next turn, this Pokemon can't retreat. It's only got 60 HP, so it's like, hey, if this is damaged at all, you can fully heal it effectively. In pre-release, maybe that's relevant. In the rest of the format, probably not too much, unless it's getting like a couple pings here and there and you're just buying a bit of time. The Vigoroth? The stage 1, you're rare candying over this, let's be honest. Slacking, it's got the ability Slacking Off. If your opponent has no EX Pokemon or V Pokemon in play, this Pokemon can't attack. So, bit of a downside on the ability. Occasionally we do get cards that shut off abilities though, like for example into Iron Thorns, it would be shutting off your ability. Iron Thorns also is an EX Pokemon though, so that would just be negating it. But if we got something reprinted similar to like Path to the Peak, where you could play it with it to disable your own ability and just get around it, you're in a good spot. But for the most part, most decks are relying on EX and V Pokemon anyways. So yeah, when you want to be attacking with this, it's going to be in big targets, and big targets are EX and V Pokemon, so you're fine. For 2 colorless energy though, you can do 280 damage. You do have to discard an energy from this Pokemon when you use it though. But you ditch an energy and then you just have ways to recur it. Potentially you could run this with like Boomerang energy, which is when you discard an energy, it just comes back. Realistically though, it's like, hey, you're losing a basic energy, retrieval it, super rot it, night stretcher it, just have more in your hand. Like there's ways to get back into it. 280 also being a really good number to hit. Into V-Star Pokemon, you're getting one shot. So that's solid. And then into stage 2 EXs, a max belt on here gets you up to 330. So yeah, you're kind of hitting those breakpoint numbers. We did also see that new stadium revealed that reduces the HP of stage 2 Pokemon by 30. So it brings most stage 2 EXs down to 300. Then you just need to be able to boost up your damage by 20. So it's like, maybe you run this with Brute Bonnet so that they get poisoned. And then you have Pearlious Jungle. So between turns, they take 2 extra damage from that poison, goes up to 310. You're taking them out. Even in a mirror match into another Slacking, they'd be being taken out. Actually, no. Ignore that. I literally just said we'd have to have 2 stadiums in play. No, that doesn't work. You could be running it with the Brute Bonnet, Radiant Sneasler, and Pearlious Jungle. So then they're taking 5 damage from poison between turns. You do 280, gets up to 330. So you're fine that way. And then like have a Binding Mochi to boost you up by another 40. You get up to 370. There you go. That's the combo. That's the real spice. Ignore that other bit. We're getting a new supporter card, Jasmine's Gaze. During your opponent's next turn, each of your Pokemon is going to take 30 less damage from attacks of your opponent's Pokemon. Honestly, not a bad shout. There's always going to be those matchups where you have it and it's just like you're scared of those specific breakpoint numbers they're trying to hit into you, and this can be assisting, right? Like, you know, into Charizard, for example, they're going to try and get their prize map, so they're giving up prizes, they're boosting up their damage by 30 each time. If you know that, hey, if they get down to like, they give up 2 or 3 prizes and then they can one-shot my guy, I have Jasmine's to reduce that a bit, could be useful. Into just like tanky decks, right? Like if you're trying to build it that maybe you're building a steel deck where you're trying to tank hits, you have Full Metal Lab, you take 30 less. Now you have Jasmine, you take 30 less. Like there's some concepts that this could definitely come up in. And as more cards get revealed, I'm sure we're going to see more tanky decks popping up. Also for formats like budget build battles and GLC, where you can just be building tanky steel decks, I feel like this is going to be a card that'll see play in those formats as well. We're getting Colbur, C-O-L-B-U-R, Colbur. Whenever this Pokemon is attacked by a dark Pokemon, you're going to reduce that damage by 60. So it's just another one of those like, hey, fix up some numbers, berries. We got 2 in Stellar Crown. I think it was for Fire and Psychic. So now we're getting that for Dark. I feel like over time, we're going to get 1 for each type. It can fix up some bad matchups for you. Same thing about what I said about Jasmine, except this is on a tool card instead of using your supporter for turn, and it's 60 instead of 30. So it's like, hey, I have 1 bad matchup. I want to fix the math. Yeah, you're good to go. Yeah, they can Lost Vacuum it. Yeah, they can Jamming Tower it, but it's dependent on them having that, and it's not using your supporter for turn to do it. Also, unless you're getting hit by that thing, this just stays on it. So honestly, yeah, really cool. I like it. And it's always good to kind of have these tech cards available to us. Will they all see play? Probably not. It's going to be like when we had those glove cards that it's like, hey, you can do, I think it was 20 extra damage or 30 extra damage into Pokemon of this type. Like there was like Justified gloves to fix up numbers into Charizard EX. Some people ran it. It was like plus 30 into dark types. This is just kind of going the other direction in reducing the damage you're taking from them. So honestly, keen for these cards. And yeah, I don't know. Would you be running any of these in any of your decks? I know in pre-release they did come up. I had the one that did 60 less damage from psychic types, chucked it into my decks in case I paired into Driftlooms, and that was pretty funny because there was situations where it was like, they're basically doing nothing into me and they're hurting their own bench. Like, nice. Outside of that though, I don't think any of them have seen play in standard just yet, but I'm sure they'll come up at some point. That's pretty much it for the new card reveals today though, and yeah, if any of these caught your eyes, I know the new EXs are pretty spicy, and honestly, I'm keen for Slacking EX. Tatsugiri, I want it to be good. I really do. Keen on that little fish. It's always felt like just shy of being good though. Like the one that we have that looks at the top 6, grabs the supporter. That's good. And then they tried to make it into like a Dondozo deck where it's like get 4 Tatsugiri in the bin, Dondozo becomes good, but then Dondozo never really hit like great breakpoint numbers. So I'm hoping we get a Dondozo EX at some point that'll maybe pair up with the Tatsugiri EX. That'd be cool. Or I might have to double check that Dondozo card, because if it says they have Tatsugiri in their name, now that we have an EX, could we have 8 in the bin and we scale up to some pretty silly numbers? I think it's specifically named Tatsugiri, but you know, that's probably a good one to double check. Now I'm kind of just rambling though. I hope you guys did enjoy the video, and if you're keen for more reveals like this, let me know in the comments down below. But till next time, stay golden, you Goombas.